very few things that are as selfless as coming into law enforcement, into the corrections, coming to a sheriff's office in this day and age.
From the heart of the country in Douglas County, Kansas, this is View from 100, a behind-the-scenes look at law enforcement, community, and the stories that shape our county.
It's an honor and a privilege to serve not just the community, but my community. I mean, I was born and raised here.
Hosted by your sheriff, Jay Armbrister, bringing you insights from the badge and beyond.
Okay, welcome everybody. We're back with the newest edition of the View from 100, I believe is what we're calling it, podcast. We're very fortunate today to have a very special guest, a member of the judicial branch of the government, whereas I reside deeply within the executive branch. But Judge McCabria has agreed to come on and speak with us, and we're going to just talk a little bit about the justice system, the criminal justice system specifically, at both a high level and maybe a little bit as a local level. But really, I think there's just so many nuances and kind of hidden corners within the system that I know I didn't understand, and I'm sure a lot of people don't understand just, a lot of the wording. There's a lot of Latin, involved in this job apparently. And so I wanted to bring you in. I want you to tell us who you are, because I just don't think enough people know who their judges are, but also where you come from and where you see us headed. So I'll just leave it to you to tell us more about yourself, but thanks for coming, and who are you and why are you here?
Well, thanks for inviting, and why I'm here is because I feel like part of the job of a district court judge is to be an ambassador for the courts.
Mm-hmm.
One of the most common questions I get, especially around when retention elections roll around, is how do I know who to vote for? Should I vote this way or that way? And I know it's a tough thing to do because we're not out in the public like normal elected officials would be, or the only time we're in the news is when the news considers it worth covering, and 95% of what happens up there isn't covered. So, part of the judicial canons encourages, part of the role of the chief judge under the Supreme Court rules is to act in a way that promotes understanding of the judiciary. So when I got your email, I decided it wasn't the worst decision I could make to come over and talk with you, and I appreciated it. So I am the chief judge of this judicial district, the 7th Judicial District. I took the bench here in 2014, very end of 2014, and then I've been the chief judge. It's a 2-year term. This is my 3rd 2-year term. And one thing to clear up right away is chief judge does not mean I'm the boss of any of the other judges.
I was going to ask you, what does that mean?
It used to be called the administrative judge position, but there's also another administrative judge position in the law. So I think they fancied the title up to make you feel better about being chief judge.
Sure.
The pay differential between district court and chief judge, it's a constant source of attempts at comedy at the judicial conferences. It's not much. The position has grown over time. It's an administrative position, so my chief responsibility is to make sure that the caseload distribution among the district court judges is fair and reasonable and equitable, and then I handle any sort of the administrative functions that come up with the court in terms of personnel issues or budget issues and those sorts of things.
Sure.
So that's really all the chief judge position is. Each judge who has a division assignment, they're the judge over their cases, and nobody has to answer to me for those decisions. There's a limited role where the chief judge, if somebody requests a judge be removed, the chief judge in that district will do a review of the request. If that judge says, no, I think I can serve, then, it's always good to have another judge make that review.
Now, when you say removed, you mean like from a specific case or from the bench?
Yeah, so you walk into the courtroom and you remember that Judge McCabria is somebody that, you got in for whatever the reason might be.
Yeah, sure.
There's
some personal
me,
history
or know my aunt, or you know something about me that you think means I can't be fair and impartial in that case.
Sure.
And a lot of times, the requests that people get are after the judge has ruled something.
Right.
That's not usually going to get you there. It's a matter of, it's not the substance of the rulings. It's not for me to review whether they followed the law. That's what our appellate courts are for. Is there a basis upon which a reasonable person could look at that relationship and think that judge in this circumstance cannot be fair and impartial? And that's a tough standard because judges have an obligation to be fair and impartial even in the face of criticism and people who don't like them and people who think that they shouldn't be a judge. I mean, you know, and people have the freedom to say those things.
Right.
Judges have an obligation to overlook them. And if a particular judge thinks that they can't, I'm confident any of our judges, you know, would step down when they think that there's the appearance of impropriety.
Sure.
But, you know, I'm there to review that decision if somebody
Just check and balance, really. So
check in.
Well, I have 1,000 questions about the work you do and the court system in general, but more about where you come from. Like, I know a bit of your history, but I know that you have deep ties to this, I mean, generational ties to this community in Douglas County. But where did you go to school? How did you get to be? I mean, I remember you as a defense attorney, you know, and then also as a prosecutor. So, I mean, kind of where'd you come from?
So the medium version of that is on my dad's side of the family, came here immediately after the Civil War, started farming. On mom's side of the family a little bit later. The place where I'm living, the house that's on the property, the older house, is the house that my great-granddad built in Eudora, Kansas.
Yeah.
My granddad was born in it. My mom grew up in it.
Holy cow.
I'm living in the house next door to it nowadays. You know, and for the most part, both sides of the family were farm people. There were some folks who did some other things as well, but until my mom and dad were the first in their family to go to KU to college, and then dad had a job with Westinghouse when they had a plant in Kansas City. That plant got closed.
Sure.
He moved to Ohio. That's where I came into the picture. But one of the great things growing up was every summer our family vacations was Eudora, Kansas. So, I remember Douglas County when Iowa was the far west side, and you know, I came back one summer and we were going to take a drive way out to see the new Clinton Lake, way out in the country. And now, you know, the first house I bought, I could see Clinton Lake from my back porch. Yeah. So there is that connection. And one of the neat things, when my dad retired and moved back here, he would go down to the coffee shop in Eudora every morning, and the guys that he grew up with, it's like he never left, you know, and I got to see my dad in a whole new light in the community. So that's the family history. Sure. My history is I graduated Ohio State University, applied to different law schools.
I didn't know that. You're a Buckeye.
I'm a Buckeye.
Holy cow. Isn't it supposed to be the Ohio State University?
You know, I didn't say I was a good Buckeye. I'm just a Buckeye.
The emphasis on the first syllable.
So I ended up going to law school in Oklahoma at Tulsa University.
Oh, okay. Golden Hurricane.
Really just made that decision because I knew some people down there, and I'd been at Ohio State, which is one of the largest, if not the largest at the time, universities, and I wanted a smaller setting. But as I got nearer to graduation, I knew I wanted to come back, and mom and dad had retired and moved back to the family farm. Mm-hmm. So started looking for jobs in Kansas as I was graduating, ended up in Coffeyville, Kansas, at what I consider to be one of the best places I could have started. It was a group of attorneys. You had some guys that were, you know, the silver hairs and some younger guys. They did a little bit of everything. I started out as a defense attorney there. Sure. And as mom and dad were getting older and more settled back in Douglas County, I started thinking about maybe I should move up here. I did that. I opened my own office in Eudora. Had that for about a year and a half between my dog dying and 9/11 happening. I decided I wanted to switch positions. I went to the Attorney General's office in Topeka, worked there for, I got to stop and think, just under 6 years.
Oh, my. Who was the AG at that time?
Carla Stovall.
Okay, yeah.
And then there was that contentious race that happened. Phil Klein got elected. I debated about what to do there, decided to stay. And I had been, so when I had my office here, I had been a defense attorney. I had done defense work primarily when I was in Coffeyville. Charles Branson was a defense attorney at the time.
Sure.
While I was in Topeka, Charles got elected district attorney. I was having coffee one day with somebody who said, you know, Charles is going to be looking to hire somebody new in his office. And that was right after the Phil Klein transition. And I thought, I'm just going to go see Charles and see what's up. I hadn't done defense work in 5 years, and we had a conversation. And Next thing I know, I'm a prosecutor.
Oh man.
Which always sort of amused me in a certain light because as a defense attorney, I had a fairly preconceived notion of prosecution.
Yeah.
But I took it thinking, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it, and I think I can do it the right way. Charles gave me the chance to do that. I was an assistant district attorney from 2006 until I took the bench in 2014. Enjoyed it completely, learned a lot from the other prosecutors in the office. And when the opportunity came up to be a district court judge, quite frankly, it was one of our sitting judges at the time encouraged me to put in. I hadn't really seen myself in that light. I did so. We can talk more about how the selection process works, but I made it onto the slate that goes up to the governor on that first run through. To my surprise, did not get selected at that turn. Put in at the next opening, went up. The governor selected me, and for those that don't know, in Douglas County, district court judges are appointed by the governor, and the process is this. There is a local selection committee comprised of 3 citizens, non-lawyers, appointed by county commissioners. They select somebody. There's 3 attorneys who are voted on by the local bar who they want to sit on the panel, and then that group is chaired by a non-voting justice from the Supreme Court. Anybody can put in. They interview with the selection committee. The committee will make a recommendation, usually in a district of our size, of 3 names to send up to the governor. You go through a governor interview process. He selects. Once you're selected, you'll stand for what's called a retention election. You'll stand the next election cycle after your appointment, thereafter every 4 years. And basically, if you've been in the ballot box, you see the question, should James R. McCabria be retained for the next 4-year term, yes or no? And if 50% of the population says no, the selection committee will be picking a new judge when I finish out my term. And if less than 50% says that, then we're retained.
Okay. So that's what governor selected you?
I was Brownback.
Brownback. Okay. That's what I'm trying to think of all the governors about that time. So, okay. And so the seventh, so there's the 3 citizens, there's 3 attorneys, and then there's the sitting justice. You said non-voting, but does he break a tie? He or she break a tie?
It has to be a majority of the
So
committee.
Of 6 people, well, they're kind of setting them up for failure.
I think it's a really a very thorough process. Of course, it's a topic of debate right now. In fact, there's going to be a vote, I guess, in August of 26 on a constitutional amendment. That's essentially the same process for selecting our Supreme Court justices. Longer terms, 6-year terms rather than 4.
Sure.
But it's and the question is, you can have a direct election, and in about half the Kansas districts, which I've never fully understood the history of this. There is direct election of judges. Wyandotte County is our closest county that runs that way, or you can have this process. And when I was in Montgomery County, that was an elected process. Between the two, everybody's entitled to their opinion. But there's going to be politics in it no matter what.
100% of the time,
It's a question of accountability, I suppose, and who you want people to be accountable to. I would say accountable more to the law versus the pressures of voting, but that's not to say that elected judges aren't doing their job. It's just part of the discussion, part of the debate.
Sure, yeah. Well, in Montgomery County, that's a unique little ecosystem anyways, having the community college. As I was growing up, it was always kind of I want to say a tough town, but it was a very diverse town, a working class town, but it was also it brought in a lot of students from out of state to play football. I mean, the Demons or whatever, the Ravens, whatever they were, they had quite a football program, and they brought a lot of kids in. So I remember, as I was coming up, I had a friend that lived down there, and he's like, "Man, yeah, it's a unique little place to live, right there on the border of Oklahoma." So
is that your knowledge base as your friend, or did you have some other connection to?
No, that was just my friend, and just traveling through there. My brother went to Independence and played football there, so we kind of knew that was kind of a rivalry between those two. A bunch of kids that just really didn't care, but but Southeast Kansas is just a whole other place, man.
It's a different culture.
It really is, and
I mean, of course, you can say Lawrence is unique in Kansas in my experience.
I I don't think there's any person inside or outside of Lawrence that wouldn't agree that we are absolutely unique. And I always like to kind of say is Lawrence is very spirited, which is the term you use for another person's kid that doesn't know how to behave, but you don't want to say they're bad. It's like, you got a really spirited kid there. Lawrence can be very spirited at time. But again, I was born and raised here and I love it. So I guess this question is more philosophical in nature, not necessarily locally, but what do you see as kind of the biggest? And I use the term threat, not in an aggressive, violent manner, but like, what do you see as the biggest issue or threat to the justice system as a whole? Like, do you see? What? I guess it's just that's the question. What do you see?
Yeah. Well, I'll premise whatever I'm going to say with the admonition I was given early on when I took the bench was, all your jokes are going to be funnier now that you're wearing the robe.
Sure.
I'm not any funnier. I don't know I wasn't funnier before I took the bench
right.
after I took the bench, or vice versa, I guess is the way to say that. And I don't know that I have any particular insight. I think anybody who watches our culture, watches
Sure.
what's going on, has their opinions about those things.
Yeah.
The single biggest threat is the fact that over time, when you look at surveys of public respect for the judiciary,
Sure.
and really for most every elected
100%.
position, for every government position, it's gone down. So I think in some ways the argument is the biggest threat to the judiciary is the judiciary. If we don't conduct ourselves in a way that people can respect, people can trust what we're doing,
Yeah.
feel like we care about what we're doing, then what we do won't have the respect and
Yeah.
the authority that it deserves.
You could take the judiciary out of that and add law enforcement into it. It's the exact same thing. I think that we are our own worst enemy. We've made mistakes, and at times we haven't owned them or learned from them. And if that's who you want to be, then that's who you're going to be. And I think the judiciary has been a little different in the fact that they do operate in a bit of a darker, not as much in the forefront of the public eye, and especially when it comes to rulings and that judges make. A judge may make 1,000 rulings in a year, but only 2 of them are going to hit the newspaper, and it's going to be, as you said, whatever the media decides is worthy of their time and attention.
Yeah, and certainly the biggest part of our caseload that comes through the courtroom is criminal.
Sure.
But, and we're here to talk about that aspect of things, and I'm glad to do that. But as a judge, we hear everything from small claims to medical malpractice, everything from contract disputes between employers and their employees and landlords and tenants. And, there's so many things beyond what gets reported in the paper that judges are asked
Sure.
to do. And those are the opportunities where we have to really connect with the people who walk through the courthouse.
Yeah.
Every day is an opportunity to either promote the judiciary or detract from it. On any given day, I can do a good job of that,
Sure.
or I can,
Yeah.
have got up on the wrong side of the bed and
Right.
not afraid to say there's days when I don't like the job I did
Sure.
judging. But the other piece of advice was any judge who likes every decision that they make probably isn't a good judge.
Nope.
Because
Yep. Nope. I don't need that person.
sometimes it's tough. Sometimes you're just doing the best you can,
Sure.
and you'd rather it were different, but this is what you feel like the law tells you have to do. And
Right. And everybody, rightfully so, people feel victimized by the justice system, or that it's broken or it's slow. But what I like to tell people is that while those may be true, it is still our system, and it is imperfect, but it is working. It just sometimes takes a long time. Sometimes it's a very painful process. But the judges, I feel, they've got a very difficult situation where they have lives balanced in the. There are lives in the jackpot on a lot of these cases, and I think people feel like that at times they don't see it as severe as it is. But I disagree with that. I think the judges take it harder than anybody at times.
I think I can say without hesitation that Douglas County, Kansas, across the nation, when I've gone to conferences, by and large, I'm impressed with the colleagues that I meet, the
Sure.
judges that I meet, the people who are doing this job and especially the ones who are doing it for, more than a term or two, who have decided this is what I want to do for a living, they agonize over those cases where they see that people's lives are being impacted, whether that's civil or criminal or whatever the case may be. Among the top tier of my experiences in dealing with other judges around the country, more so in the state of Kansas, because that's what I've had the most contact with. What I would want people to hear is the judges of Douglas County care about the cases that are in front of them. They care about the people. They care about the perceptions of whether they're being fair, whether they're being even-handed in what they do. You're commanded, and you can't let those public perceptions control your decision-making, but, you're sensitive to them. You think about what those reactions are going to be. And, one of my sort of guidepost quotes among judicial, my mind just went blank. People in the Hall of Fame of judicial quotes, and, Supreme Court justices, Oliver Wendell Holmes back in 1881 said the life of the law is not logic, it's experience. And he said it a different way years later that, a painting, life is a painting, not an equation. So does the experience of living in Douglas County influence how I conduct myself as a judge? Does it affect every judge that's on the bench in Douglas County? I think that's part of the reason why one of the requirements to be a judge in Douglas County is you live in Douglas County. We want those community standards, those community sensibilities to be part of what goes into the decision-making. You're applying the law. You have to follow the law, but the life of the law is not just black and white statutes. There's going to be an element of, in certain cases, experience and sensitivity to what's the right thing to do. That can't trump, but it has to be part of the equation.
Absolutely. I think you make a great point too, is that, and I often say this to folks that work for me, is that the reason that this hurts, because they've experienced something, the reason that it hurts is because you care. So I'm glad that it hurt you, because I like that you care. I need to know that you care about what you're doing. And I think that's a great point about judges, is that if they didn't care about the lives that were in the jackpot, you're right, I wouldn't want them as a judge. I think that every decision to alter a person's life should come with a certain amount of not guilt necessarily, but just like angst, like this is going to hurt, but unfortunately I have to. I'm the one sitting here wearing the robe. This is my decision to make, and this is my decision that I will pass down. But it should never come easily, and that's what I'm hearing you say, is that it never does.
And I'm hardly an AI expert. I just would say I hope we never come to a day where we're asking computers to make those decisions. No matter how much information you have, if you're a computer, you're running an equation. There's got to be that human element.
That's exactly right. So. Yeah, it would, like umpires call them balls and strikes. I mean, the computer can get it right, but the human element is what we actually need back there. So, no, great points, and I think that's a good thing for everybody to understand. My own personal story through the courts has been, I started in the jail, I worked for a month and a half in courtroom security. But when I was a jailer, especially in the old jail that used to be at the law enforcement center, we would actually take the inmates and walk them to the elevator. We would take them down to the courtrooms. We would walk in there and we would sit with them. No gun or nothing, be uniform. And we would have to take notes on whatever was going on. And it wasn't until I was that closely involved with the court process that I realized how complicated it was. And I would write little notes in my breast pocket for questions that I was going to ask Judge Jean Shepard when she had a free moment. Be like, what does pro se mean? What is ad litem? Why is that this or that? And of course, she was overly helpful and amazing to the dumb little kid that was asking her these questions. But I do think that there is a lot of kind of, I don't say myth, but mystery surrounding the the judicial system. So I wanted to ask just a couple of really nuts and bolts questions for people and myself, but we've already kind of discussed it a little bit. But like, what is the difference? Because we've heard about the district court judges versus magistrate judges versus other types of judges. And I know that is different across states, different across counties, even different within counties sometimes. But what is the difference there? When people talk about a district court judge, what are they talking about?
Yeah, so I again will offer the disqualifier that I am not an expert on.
Sure, yeah.
On all the history that goes into it, but the short sort of Reader's Digest version that's been given to me and the little bit of reading that I've done on it. And sometimes you get into these issues as you're researching different legal issues. But, there was a day when we didn't have a lot of law-trained individuals, but we had courts.
Yeah.
We needed people to fill those positions. And so the magistrate judge position in Kansas is a judge of limited jurisdiction who can hear certain types of cases. Usually they can review they can review search warrants, they can take certain judicial actions, but they're not required to be law trained. They don't have to be a graduate from an accredited law school. And I say to this day, when people hear that, they seem in disbelief.
Right.
To this day, one of the best judges I ever appeared in front of was in Montgomery County, who was a magistrate judge. He was non-law trained. He was a rancher. He owned an insurance business. He ran for that position because I don't know what his motives were other than he told me he just looked at it and thought that the prior magistrates weren't taking the job seriously, and he thought it could be done well and done right. And he spent a lot of time doing his research, and more than anything, that was the judge that I saw caring about the decisions that he made.
Right.
It just, anybody who appeared in front of him knew that. Anyway, that distraction aside, so the magistrate judge, limited jurisdiction, they can only take actions that affect issues that occur within the judicial district. A district court judge is a judge who has complete jurisdiction over any issue that can come before the courts in the state of Kansas. So a district magistrate judge can do anything that a magistrate judge can do, plus more. And they have authority to issue rulings that can have impacts outside of their jurisdiction. They can authorize search warrants outside of their jurisdiction. So it's a and I say it's a holdover from the old days, but in Kansas we're facing a little bit of a crisis. It's easy to joke that there's too many lawyers these days. In some ways there are, but in some of the less populated districts in this state, it's hard to find an attorney, let alone a district court judge. And so, we've got the one district, one judge rule in Kansas where every district has to have a district court judge. But some of those districts are 3 and 4 and 5 counties large, and the rest of the positions are filled up by magistrate judges. So it's a critical part of our system. I have nothing but respect for the people who put in for it. And again, by and large, I see those people taking their job seriously and doing the best they can. And, in some of the communities, I think that's a very popular position because people like knowing that somebody has their perspective that's going to be making those decisions.
Sure. Yeah. And I think we living in Northeast Kansas get a little spoiled at times because we are resource rich. We have large communities. We have everything. You get west of, I know I always joke that Topeka is the edge of western Kansas, but really you get out past Auburn and some of those places, Alma, it really starts getting pretty densely unpopulated. And like for us, the sheriff's office, the state requires every county to have a coroner, and some places the sheriff is the coroner. There's a sheriff in Montana. I'm not making this up. His name is Sheriff Dutton, Leo Dutton, but on his business card it says Sheriff Leo Dutton, sheriff and coroner. He is not a doctor. You do not have to have a medical license. You do not have to be certified to be a coroner. And, and people are like, no way, that can't be. But again, that's because that was born out of necessity. You get out west, there's just not everybody that can do those kind of things that we have at our fingertips. So, yeah, I think we lose perspective up here because we have everything we need, right here we've got the capital 40 minutes one way and downtown Kansas City 40 minutes another way. So we're pretty fortunate. Back to the judges now. We don't have any magistrate judges in Douglas County. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Now, but we do have pro tem judges. Now, what is the difference there?
So the county commission has been very supportive of the judiciary. I guess I could try and articulate the issues with how county commissions and have to support state-funded judges and courts.
Unfunded mandates? Is
Right.
that what we're talking about? Okay.
So, not every district has the support that, as far as I can tell, historically Douglas County has had, and starting sometime well before I got on the scene. There was a pro tem position that was part-time that just sort of handling rote matters that freed the district court judges up to do other work. And over time, that's developed into a full-time position. We've had Judge Peggy Kittle was a pro tem judge before she became district court judge. We've had we've had the example of a pro tem judge becoming an appointed district court judge. The reality of modern caseloads and the complexities of those caseloads, we now have 2 pro tem district court judges. They're totally funded by the county commission. They're hired by the district court, nominally by me, but of course it's a process of interview with our judges and discussion among our judges. And, I don't think that we could function. Could we get the job done if we had to without those extra positions? I think we could. Does it allow us all to do a better job and to be more specialized and to be more thoughtful? Absolutely. So
Sure.
we have, by statute, we're allowed to appoint pro tem judges. That's what we've done. We, as chief judge, I make the decision on what assignments they receive. I'm glad to say that we have 2 very smart, very dedicated people, and they're handling case types that I think are exactly suited to them and help us be able to do everything else that we have to do.
Sure. And what is there a limitation on them? Like they couldn't take a death penalty case, or is it completely up to the chief judge?
It's up to the chief judge.
Oh, okay.
It is up to the chief judge, and I'm going to make those. I think any chief judge here would make those decisions, and historically before me, I wasn't the chief judge who started this pro tem appointed position, but I've inherited it, and I see the value of it. I think every judge in every district should be a chief judge for a while because it opens your eyes up to so many things that you don't ever think about. But those assignments are going to go to district court judges, and it's a matter of experience and perspective on who you have in those positions and how to hold them accountable, and those are things that I think we've developed that work well here.
Yeah. So if Douglas County, so we have I can't remember. We have 7 district court judges.
7 state district court.
Yeah. And if we, and I kind of know the answer, but I'm gonna ask it as if I don't. If I feel like the system is completely bogged down, the courts are overworked and they're packed full, we need 2 new judges. Who would I have to convince, and what would that process look like to get a district court judge or 2 added on? Because this is a fight we waged for the last few years.
Yeah. Well, having been part of that fight, if I knew the answer, I might have more success.
Yeah.
It's the Supreme Court that makes the decision about how many divisions district courts have.
Sure.
Office of Judicial Administration is their administrative wing. They do a very good job of trying to administer courts in a state as diverse as Kansas. We have what are sometimes referred to as the frontier districts, our urban districts, our mid-level districts, and comparing the workload in Douglas County versus Gove County versus Ford County, you can do it in a very abstract sense, but at that abstract level, they've told us that the workloads are per judge are evenly distributed. But when you get into the actual workaday machinations of any particular district and the demands that I think come with the more densely populated you are and the complexities of what happens, I think that starts to fall apart.
Sure.
So our own perspective is we would definitely be able to utilize at least one more district court judge. I think in many ways that's, and I've made that request as chief judge more than once, and I get handed the abstract comparisons, and so I understand where they're coming from.
Sure.
But it's up to the Supreme Court and Office of Judicial Administration.
Sure. So ultimately, because the district court judges, you are a state employee.
That's correct.
Yeah, and so I think that's where people kind of get confused in that if we want a new judge in a new courtroom in a new division, it has to come from the state, and they have to agree to pay for it. And the fight that we had also was and I'm paraphrasing, and correct me if I'm wrong, but basically they said, even if we were going to give you a new judge, you don't even have a space for a new courtroom. So we're probably not even going to entertain it until you have a space for another courtroom, which has led us to where we are today with the building. But that is, I think, what is good for people to understand is that Douglas County saw that we were struggling with the shortage of judges and the fact that it was bogging the system down and creating a longer system. That's where Douglas County stepped in and says, okay, how can we help this? And that was where we funded as a county, one at first, now two pro tem judges to help ease the workload. So
that's right.
And I think that's something that people don't understand.
And I don't mean to misstate. We're not alone in the state.
No. Yeah.
But in terms of supporting to the degree that they do, I think Douglas County stands out in that.
Oh, I totally agree. And they have been so good to me as an agency as well, because being the county, we're stuck in between city and state governments, and we end up kind of being a catch-all. But the state loves to send down unfunded mandates, and then the city likes to say that this doesn't really fit our purview, so it needs to go to the county. And we become kind of this weird hodgepodge dumping ground of these anomalies at times. And I've always just, in my 4 years I've been just so grateful for the county that they're supportive, but also that we have, we're a county of means, and I get it because I talk to other sheriffs. There's 104 sheriffs across the state, and I don't know of any of them that are as fortunate as I am, in my opinion. But to hear them talk about their tax base and their budget and how hard it is to get more money because there's just no money to be had, it makes me realize just how fortunate I am to be live, work, operate inside this county. So,
which goes to the point of, that's not to say there aren't problems, that
right?
There's not
no.
shortcomings, that there's not things we couldn't do better. But among the choices, it's a pretty good place to be. And I say that about when people look at the judiciary overall and they think there's criticisms, there's things we could do better, there's things that anybody can feel like, why don't they do it this way? That's okay. We like those criticisms, but give me something better.
Sure.
And I think that's where the arguments start to fall short.
Oh, and I think and I think that there's just so much that people just don't understand. Any problem that most problems that I've found where people have a disagreement or are angry about something that we did or did not do, if they're willing to have the conversation at the end of it, after transparency and education, most of the time, almost always, they're like, "Oh, I didn't know that. That makes sense now. I'm still mad about it. Don't get me wrong. You still screwed this up, but I see now how that this just is the way it is." So
I think that's so important for people to understand how the process happened, that the fix wasn't in, and it wasn't that people weren't heard. It's here's what happened. And actually there's plenty of research that shows as long as people understand how you got to that outcome as a judge, even if they didn't get the outcome that they wanted, they will be more accepting of your decision than if you don't explain yourself and you don't have that transparency.
Yeah, sentencing grid is a great example. People are like, well, why didn't you throw away the key? This person did this, and this. I have to fit it within this box. Now, there are ways to move outside of that box that take a lot of work, but ultimately it has to be within this box. I was only allowed to give them this to this, somewhere in this range. And I think a good example of that too is a conversation that you had with me to explain something that I didn't understand, because it seemed so simple, and it was about failures to appear. Somebody fails to appear in court, whether it be for nefarious reasons, or they just simply didn't have a ride, or they just forgot, whatever, had to work. The plan, that is a big utilizer of some resources when it comes to warrants being arrested, and people have to sit in jail, and there's been a lot of movement and talk around how can we avoid this. And so I came to you with a proposal, basically, like every month each judge has an amnesty day. You failed to appear in my court sometime in this last 60 days. You can come in, present yourself in front of me, and I'll get you a new court date. No more warrant, we'll lift it. But if you fail to appear again, and to me, in this little brain, it was just like, man, this makes perfect sense. But after talking through it with you, realizing that a judge simply cannot see or interact with a client, with a defendant, without their counsel present. I mean, like, it cannot happen. And I was like, oh, well, then that shuts this whole idea down. Now that I understand that, I realize that we have to figure out a different way. But up until that point, it was like, man, this makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't we do this? And so I really appreciate the fact that it's as simple as explaining it, but also it's frustrating. Like, gosh darn it, it just seems so easy. Why can't we just do this? But that's the way the system is set up. And so it's a phrase I keep catching myself. This is the game by which we must play now. And so it's just kind of an example of why things can be frustrating, but also why they happen the way they do. And it's for a reason at times, even though it may be frustrating as all get out.
Yeah, and we can talk about that some more if you like. I think there's maybe some other aspects to that. I know that there's districts that have such dockets. Mm-hmm. What do you want to achieve out of that?
Yeah.
And, if it's just to reduce the number of outstanding warrants that you have, you can make it look pretty good, but you're not really addressing some of the underlying issues to it. What I would say is there's a it's not quite a maxim in the law, but it's a long-standing sort of English common law tradition that we value the process more over the substance when it comes to people's liberty interests. Mm-hmm. And when I was in law school and I heard somebody say, it's better that 10 guilty people go free than that one innocent person should suffer harm. Mm-hmm. You think to yourself, I don't like that equation. Of course we should. But what that phrase is telling us is we're more concerned with the process. We're more concerned that we're not overstepping into people's lives, even at the risk of sacrificing the idea that maybe that guilty person goes free.
Yeah.
So it's a mindset of understanding the balance between the practical outcomes that we all want.
Sure.
And if that's the way I were to prioritize my decisions, I would have a whole different system in place. Yeah. But I'm constrained, and every judge has to be constrained by first the Constitution and then the law, and applying those things in a way that achieves that balance. So when we discussed the idea of those dockets, I mean, people show up. You don't know what day they're going to show up. You'd have to go track down what was the posture of their case. There may have been reasons why in that particular case you wouldn't just on the spot withdraw that warrant. And so it's time, resources, and getting it right. Yeah. In addition to, you can't just engage people who have counsel who or may say things that are going to make their situation worse or do something that's going to make their situation worse. So it's all that balance.
Sure. No, and it's a that is an ever evolving discussion as we speak. I know that some folks have really taken it on. So we hope to have some workarounds, but ultimately we got to figure out ways to get folks to come to court. And that's a whole nother episode, a whole nother day.
And anybody who's maybe watched some of the discussions at CJCC's heard this, but it's worth repeating. We've looked at our failure to appear numbers, and the number of times you can miss court and have a chance to make it right without a warrant coming out for you is, I would put that up against any place in the state of Kansas.
100%. Absolutely.
And, the ability to informally resolve those if you can remember who your attorney was and get yourself back on the docket.
Yeah.
There are ways to handle it.
Sure. Yeah.
So we've made, I am, I'm always willing to think of other ways to do stuff, but the way we're handling
Right.
our failures to appear is it's not because we're not thinking about it or because we don't care about the impacts of
Right.
those warrants either on the people or the law enforcement who has to serve them or
Yeah. Sure.
all of those things.
Yeah. Well, and we did kind of an informal poll one time within one of our housing units inside the jail, people who were in on failure to appear alone, no other charges, no nothing else. And I can't remember if we spoke to 13 folks. It was somewhere in that. Of that, 100% of them all said, "I knew when I had to be at court. I just wasn't going. I was spun out. I was paranoid. I was having a break. I thought I was convinced I was going to go to jail if I went. I wasn't ready to detox." Those were the reasons given. And I think that's kind of another thing is that, and that was an unscientific, doodle poll basically. But I think that's also part of the narrative is that it was that I just didn't have daycare. I had to work that day. It was, my lawyer didn't tell me the date. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but I feel like we lose sight of which is the exception and which is the rule. So.
And every judge in Douglas County understands those practical realities.
Right.
And if it's your first time failing to appear,
Yeah.
and it's not the likelihood that you're going to get that warrant. If the lawyer says, "Hey, I've been in touch and I don't know why they're not here,"
Right.
Judge, can we reset this? I mean, that's going to be the default, not
100%.
my goodness, you didn't follow my order to appear, and I don't
Yeah.
care what your reasons were.
Oh yeah.
Those sorts of things.
Oh, I can't imagine. Think of how many times I sat, especially at the 1:30 docket days, where some of those got very long, and the attorney would be like, "I just talked to my client, but I don't know why they're here." Okay, we're just going to move you to the bottom of the stack, and we're going to go through everybody else and make sure they get here in time. I've seen that 1,000 times over. Rarely, never. I've seen a judge know I called it right now.
And I think that goes back to this is a district where the community would expect their judges to act in that way.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
we're sensitive to those things.
Totally agree. Yeah, I do, and this is me being kind of sour. I think at times the voices demand things that they're already getting. People want us to be human and compassionate, and I see that happening, but sometimes it's just not what gets seen.
Well, until they get the chance to talk to somebody
Sure.
who's in it.
Yeah.
Like you said, more often than not, they're like, "Oh, I didn't even know that
Yeah.
part of the equation."
Exactly.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Most people's expectations and demands, I think, of the judiciary are reasonable.
Sure.
And for whatever reason, they think it's not happening that way
Yeah.
because so much of the world can be unreasonable.
Right,
And,
right.
and that's somehow a dark concern that maybe things aren't as they should be.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying everything's perfect, but by and large, the concerns that I hear people express, I'm able to say to them, "You know what? Let me tell you, here's how we do deal with that."
Right.
And not just here, but in a lot of places, but
Yeah.
here especially, I think we've been mindful of those
I
issues.
totally agree. Well, we've gone on long enough. I cannot thank you enough. I always ask the same stupid question of all the people who come on here, and I'm going to ask you. You've heard it but But I'm also going to ask you a separate question at the end because I know you like certain things, but I want to know. And you learn so much about people. What was your first concert? What was your last concert? And what was your favorite concert? And they can be all the same, or they can be I don't go to concerts.
First concert was supposed to be Johnny Cash.
What?
Yeah, and we missed it. So
What? Like you missed it? Like you got high and didn't make it, or he did? He got high and didn't make it, or
No.
like
Johnny
the car
Cash
broke down.
performed. We were, but it was at the big rodeo in Wyoming, at Rodeo Day.
Oh, yeah.
in Cheyenne.
Yeah.
And something happened, and they did a switch with the Statler brothers. So instead of Johnny Cash, we saw the Statler brothers, which was a fine concert.
What year would this have been?
Oh man,
I mean, roughly.
87.
Okay.
88, maybe,
Sure.
something like that. Last concert I went to would have been a performance over at KU Symphony. Can't remember how long ago it was.
Like at the Lead Center?
At the Lead
Oh,
Center.
yeah. God, I love that place.
And then favorite concert? The favorite concert that I had the chance to go to and didn't was the opportunity to see Willie Nelson in a bar about 3 times the size of this room in Austin.
Oh my God.
And
That would
for
be
some
amazing.
reason, I made the decision I should go do something else.
Oh, that's so dumb.
So that's my biggest. That's what I say is my favorite concert that I ever went. Could have seen Willie.
So
Setting.
I got to see Willie at Liberty Hall
Yeah,
probably 10 or 15 years ago. Absolutely amazing. I'll never, I'm a music enthusiast. I love going to shows. It's still the best opening of a show I've ever seen, where he's got that great big Texas flag up and he breaks into Whiskey River and that thing drops and they just start going. It's like, I'm getting just goosebumps thinking about it. It was amazing. And on top of that, you're like, that's Willie Nelson. Like, that's the dude.
The guy
He's right
has
there.
it. I mean, he just really has the charisma and the talent and everything.
Sure. Oh, he's everything. Yeah. And I inherited all my dad's records, and it's all that 70s country gold, the Waylon and the Willies and the Johnnies but I've also got a bunch of, Mississippi John Hurt and a bunch of old blues stuff. So they're just cherished because it's like, it's also my tie back to my dad, is like, he loved that same music. And now here I am watching one of his idols, it's just so great. But yes, I wish you would have gone to that show.
Me too.
Well, thank you again for joining us.
There was a separate question.
Oh, yeah, well, yes, that's right. There was. Well, I've kind of lamented on but I know that you're a fan of Western culture and Western. So, other than Louis L'Amour, who is your favorite Western author, or do you have one?
Larry McMurtry's high up.
Oh my gosh, me too. The Lonesome Dove, yeah.
Lonesome Dove, of course, and the series that came after that.
Yeah, the Comanche, was Cheyenne Moon or something, Moon, Comanche Moon, yeah.
So,
Flower.
good stuff. My favorite Western movie of all time is The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. The Jimmy Stewart character who plays the lawyer who comes out west and seeks justice. I've just, from an early age, some sort of inspiration for me.
Yeah, it's a cowboy Atticus Finch. I mean,
right.
Yeah, good, honest lawyer doing the good work. So, okay, well, I think that actually is perfect for you. The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. So, I can't believe it's not Tombstone. That's the greatest country. That's the greatest Western movie
for
ever
other
made.
reasons, that's a great movie.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on. We can't thank you enough for the work you do. I personally have always just I'm just glad you're in the position that you're in. So, and we're lucky to have you.
And time went fast. I'd love to have the opportunity to talk about our specialty courts
Oh,
and some
man,
of the other things
yeah.
that we do. But it's a topic that I can talk about for a long time. So
Sure.
I appreciate the chance
Well,
to talk about
how about
any of it.
this? Let's just make a promise to do that again, and maybe we could even get Judge Picorni or Judge Hanley to join us, and we could talk about all of that stuff. I would love to, and I think that's great for the people to hear about. So, thank you so much.
Jay.
All right.